Welcome to Small Talk by Sfarim Chatter. I'm Nachi Weinstein. On this episode of Small Talk, I'm going to be joined once again by Rabbi Isaac Rice, who's the Rav in Anshe Chesed in Hewlett in the Five Towns. And on this episode, we'll be discussing the new edition of the Haggadah of Pesach Siach Yitzchak, which Yitzchak Meltzon, the author of Mechaber of Shvisa Shabbos, also the Siach Yitzchak commentary and tefillah in the Ishe Yisrael Siddur, may be well known to listeners from that. And he also has a Haggadah, Siach Yitzchak. So this Haggadah was edited by Rabbi Rice and published through Mosad Rav Kook. So thank you, Rabbi Rice, for joining me once again on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
What can you tell listeners about this Haggadah, Siach Yitzchak, and the new edition?
The Haggadah Siach Yitzchak was printed by Rav Maltzin around the turn of the 20th century, 1905, 1906, around then. And since then, it was never properly redone. There was just offset typing that was done. And then I think maybe 20 years ago, there was a Haggadah Hagra Hashalem that had the Gra along with this as well. But they didn't, no corrections were made. They just took the text and didn't change anything. I myself was looking for a copy of this Haggadah for my own use, and I couldn't find one anywhere. It was out of print. Nothing was available. And I guess selfishly, I decided that I wanted to go through it and go through it carefully. And that turned into me thinking that would be beneficial to allow for other people to have access to this Haggadah that was not really around that much. It really is an incredible Haggadah, as hopefully we'll be able to talk about for a few minutes. But everything was retypeset, corrections. A lot of the Haggadah was out of order in the original printing, and we had to reorder everything in the right way. We added all the Maramakomos, corrected mistaken Maramakomos, Ha'aros to explain places where things needed a bit of background explanation. And I went to Mosad Rav Kook because they have a big interest in reprinting Sfarim from the base medrash to the Gra. I think they've already done the Chayadam and Yitzchak Chaver, other Haggadahs as well, and I thought it was a good fit, and they agreed as well.
Dever Shalom told us Adam of the Chayadam, mentioned others. I do want to point out, though, because I mentioned to you off air that I mentioned this to a couple of friends that are interested in new editions of Sfarim, and particularly these type of Sfarim. Those editions of Sfarim were bare. They were just literally reprints. There was new font, but nothing else done to them whatsoever. So the assumption when this one came out, and it's as of when we're recording, it's not in America. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't. It's on Moshe Rav Kook's website. I presume it's available in Israel. But regardless, this one, when people saw it, they said, "Oh, it must be the same thing. They just retypeset. They didn't do anything." That's not true, because this one you edited. So this one was actually, edited by you, worked on by you, and then published through Mosad Rav Kook. So although it looks the same, there is an introduction here. There is, told us of your short introduction, told us of the Mechaber, which we'll discuss briefly. There's also his introduction, which we could talk about, and you added the Haaretz there of Baron Lapiansky, as well as throughout the Haggadah, you have many corrections, and there's footnotes mainly focusing on all the sources and corrections, but also some footnotes here or there. So actually, this is a real new edition, newly edited. Okay,
correct. Hopefully, it's a real, it's a kavod for the nifter in the sense that it's really being mechabed him and really something that will be a chaticha royal eskabed.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Yitzchak Meltzon. As you mentioned, the Mechaber Shvisa Shabbos, the also Siach Yitzchak in the Ishe Yisrael Siddur. He is from Beis Midrash Shel Hagra, Talmidei Hagra. His father, Shmuel Meltzon, is known as the Evan Shloima. That's probably well known. So, if you want to talk about him and his little bit of a biography about him.
Sure. I did publish a biography in the introduction. I did actually try to get people who had expertise in the Yishul Hayashan, people who are very familiar with that historical time period to write a new biography. Just wasn't meant to be. So in the end, I took the biography from Tnuas HaMusar from Rav Dov Katz with permission of Rabbi Katz's son, who I think is the Rav in Malay Adumim. And we took the introduction, also added a lot from other sources and tried to fill in to give a more complete story. The basic biography is as follows. He was born in Sluska in the mid-1800s. His father was the Maggid of the city, author of the Evan Shleima, collects all the teachings of the Gra. His father was a Chashav Tavachachim, Shemayim as well. And from his father, he got a lot of the derech of the Gra. and really became his foundation and learning and Haggadah through his life. Now, Rabbi Yitzchak Maltzman was obviously too young to be counted amongst the early Talmidim of Yisrael Salanter, but he really became one of the more influential later Talmidim of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter and the Ruach HaMusar. When he was a Bachar, he learned under Rabbi Yisrael and Memel, and he got smicha from him when he was a late teenager, connected him for the rest of his life, and I think even lived together. He was mishamash him for a certain amount of time. And by the account, he was there at Rabbi Yisrael's bedside at the time of his patira. After he got married, he learned for a time in different kolim. He learned in the new Slobodka Kolel. He became the Dayan of Kelm at a certain point, and he would sell Svarim and I think Shmur Matzah as well in order to maintain a Parnasa. He learned in the Beis HaMusar in Kelm. He was close with the Alter of Kelm. Eventually he went to Radin so he could take care of the chinuch of his sons. He was the Bochein in the Chavetz Chaim's yeshiva. And he had, by all accounts, the most extraordinary Bekias. You can look in the Haggadah, the Mar Makomos he quotes somewhere, all over Rishas, all over Rishonim. And they say b'shem Rabbi Yisrael that when Rabbi Yitzchak Maltzman was present, you didn't need any other Sfarim. He had everything. Halach, Haggadah, Musar, Machshava, everything there. And they said in the name of Rav Kook. Rav Kook said, Ratzon Yirei Av Yaseh applies to Rabbi Yitzchak Maltzman. That Hashem listened to him and paid attention to his davening. He wrote about Amunah, and he used the scientific writings to show that you have to clarify Amunah as well. And he authored a mimer called Sfas Emes, talking about the wisdom of Chazal and Torah Shtal Pei. He wrote a lot of essays as well, and really he's delving in Amunah and making sure that people understood Yikar Amunah, and talking about the importance of Shabbos and Midos Tovos, Cheshbon Nefesh. When he saw there was a laxity in Shmir Shabbos, he wrote a whole sefer called Asharas HaShabbos, about Shabbos as the root of all Kedusha and the gravity of Chil Shabbos. And he wrote the Sefer Shvisa Shabbos, which is really a monumental work that was used by all the poskim of the 20th century about the Lamites Malachos. And he wrote a sefer called Dikdukei Chaverim about the influence of friends and neighbors in proper literature. A small sefer called Seder LaMishnah about to get people into learning Mishnayos. Whenever he saw there was an issue, he wrote a sefer. That was his thing. And probably most famously, the Siach Yitzchak on the Siddur, and the Haggadah as well, as we'll talk about. He first published the Ravid's Tavim Deim. He published an edition of the Ramchal's Derech Hashem. I think his Hakdama is the source of the famous Shmuel B'Shem the Gra, that Mesilas Yesharim has no extra words until the 11th chapter. A lot of Shmuel B'Shem the Gra and the Ramchal are there as well. Again, Yerushalayim, Tikkun Amidos, even the non-Jews in Kel viewed him as a tzaddik who gave brachos. He eventually made his way to Eretz Yisrael, and he moved there again around the time he published the Haggadah as well. He lives in Yerushalayim, printed Svarim for Parnasa, taught in Yeshivas Eitz Chaim, but really, probably one of the more tragic parts of his life is that his children did not stay on the path of Torah Mitzvos. One son left Yiddishkeit, and he brought the other children to Eretz Yisrael, hopefully thinking that they would remain from if they went to Eretz Yisrael, and that did not happen as well with the second son. And he was actually very sharp, very, very sharp. The stories that he told his son's friends not to play with his son because he was having a bad influence on them. I'll tell you the truth. When there were these very sharp stories about him, Mossad Rav Kook did not want me to publish those stories in the biography. They originally wanted me to take them out, but I said it's important to keep them in because if you go through the Haggadah, you'll see his sharpness, and his midah emes is his personality. When he writes sharply, he practiced what he preached. He very much lived his life this way. And I think on the day before he passed away, he told Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap that he wanted to write a biography of his Rebbe, Rabbi Salanter, but it never came to be. And he passed away in his 60s, and he's buried on Har HaZeisim.
Okay, so let's focus on the Haggadah of all his farm. What style is the commentary?
It is, I would say, the most Litzvisha Perush on the Haggadah that might have ever been printed. It is a mix of Ramban, Rambam, Ramchal, Gra, Dubna Magid, longer pieces, and Mamarim and Hashkaf and Amunah. shorter pieces as well. He also collects, there's a big likud as well from Gedolei Litza, the Gra, the Chayadim, the Netziv, Darshanim, Magidim of Lithuania as well. The main style, the main purpose of Haggadah is to teach Emunah through Sibur Tzias Mitzrayim, which is the main mitzvah of the night, and he does it. He's very, very careful in what he chooses. We could talk about this a little bit more later on. Very careful in how he chooses it, the way he writes it. The style is, again, of this base Medrash of the Gra, the Ramchal. It's almost like a precursor to the style of Rav David Cohen from Chevron. This mixture of Ramchal and Gra, and bring them together in one piece together. That hashkafa of Emunah, all in one location.
Do you have any examples that you want to tell listeners about that might illustrate this?
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, there's the Haggadah. The Haggadah is a piece into itself, but maybe we could talk about that afterwards. There are, let's see, I think let's do the first piece. The first piece on Halach Manya. He says, this is the lechem that our avos ate in Mitzrayim. Rashi and the Ramban say that it's the bread that reminds us of the inoi, the tsaros, the lachatz, the mamish, the meager food they had to live on. And by speaking of this lechem oni, we're also bechazik those people whose hearts feel bitter and they say, no, what's the simcha? We're still in Galus. What are we so happy over here by the Leil Seder? So he says that the truth is, like the Kuzari points out, that the inyan of Shabbos itself is that it's a matana tova. And without it, the poor Jew would never have a day of menucha or clean clothing to wear. And Kal v'chomer on Yantiv, and especially on Leil Pesach, when mamish everyone, scrubs and cleans and washes and prepares their homes to the highest degree. And even the Ani Shabbat Yisrael is given all of his needs, talakosos, matzos, whatever else he needs for the Seder. And he sits, b'haseba b'simcha. And Chazal say in the Gemara in Shabbos that any mitzvah that Klal Yisrael accepts b'simcha, we continue to do b'simcha. And that's exactly what happened with the mitzvahs of Leil Pesach. Throughout the generations, the Jewish people were most nefesh to keep the Seder properly, b'leiv shalem. And even those people went into the army or sent far away in Gullus, try not to miss a Leil Seder. Not like Shabbos, he says, which already he says he writes very contemporary about what's going on. In the Midbar, people were already machal by going out to collect man. So Shabbos always has more nisyanos. He says, but we say halach manya, we're pointing out the hashgacha of the Ribono Shel Olam. That after more than 3,000 years, we're still eating the same matzah our avos ate, the same mitzvah, the same taste of gula, and even someone who's hungry the whole year on that night also sits b'haseba and he joins the simcha. And therefore we say, Kol dich v'yesiv v'yechol, Kol ditchich yesiv v'yifsach, because even the poorest Jew is given everything he needs for Pesach, and that itself is part of the miracle of the Jewish people in Chum this night, that we all come back to Leil Seder, and for one night, everyone has this opportunity to tap into that. So again, Kuzari, Ramban, bringing all these pieces together to give a mahalach in the Pashup Shat of the Seder through Emunah.
Okay, now we can turn to the intro. Psicha Keleles, Levar Inin Golus Mitzrayim V'Amistayef Mizeh. It's a lengthy introduction, so what's the introduction about?
I thought the length, the people complain, they get a Haggadah, and then they're done with it after the first 2 days of Pesach, and then they don't know what to do over Pesach for the rest of the last 6 or 7 days. So at least with this Haggadah, you can read the biography. That'll take you at least, half a day or something, and then the Haggadah. The Haggadah should take a person at least for the rest of Pesach. It is a long mimer on Galus Mitzrayim, and the introduction, Rabbi Lopiansky himself has given shirim on this Haggadah before, because he felt there was a lot to say over here. And he goes through and rejects a number of the classical reasons until he gives his own understanding about the purpose of Galus and Galus Mitzrayim. And he says the inyan of why Klal Yisrael had to go down to Mitzrayim is discussed by Chazal and Mefarshim in many ways. And he says that there's the question of Avram's B'ma'eda, that the Rush says, the Pasuk tells us that because Avram said, how am I going to know? And that's where he was punished. So then he rejects that, because how could the children suffer because of the question of their father? Then he talks about the view of the Sforno and the Midrash, and that Galus came because of the sins of Klal Yisrael Mitzrayim, and he goes on to reject that as well. And the Sefer Maisa Hashem, which he quotes a number of times, I think Rav Ashkenazi, he quotes a number of times as well. that it was actually a Besura Tova to Avram. It was a good thing. Galus was a good thing, and this is Avram's Difus Ratzon, that Hashem's presence be revealed to his children. And he gives a Musar approach. It was Hachana to prepare them for Kabbalah HaTorah, to teach them humility, like the Balaketa says in the Shla. And then he ends, and he kind of settles around the reason of the Alshach and the Mekubalim, that it was to purify from the Zuama of the Chet Adam Rishon. And in early generations, humanity was too coarse to have Gilu Shechina, and the Gullus served as a Kor HaBarzel to separate the gold from the dross. And he concludes that they all come down to the essentially basic idea. The essential purpose of Gullus was the purification and the preparation for Matan Torah. The form, the length, the harshness, the timing, that was shaped by the choices and the shortcomings of the nation. And he goes on to give just a beautiful mimer on the purpose of Gullus, and also to take out of Gullus Mitzrayim, and also, in general, every Gullus unto itself.
You mentioned Rabbi Lapiansky gave Shirim, and in this Haggadah you have Haggahs, and some of the notes there are from Rabbi Lapiansky. Each note that's from Rabbi Aaron is noted at the beginning that it's from Rabbi Aaron. The other notes and the footnotes are from you. But where did these footnotes from Rabbi Lapiansky come from?
Rabbi Lapiansky, the Shirim are on his website. Rabbi Lapiansky gave Shirim on this Haggadah, I think, a number of times, and I transcribed his comments, not his translation of reading it, but his comments, what he had to add to it. And then Rabbi Lapiansky looked over the Aros and gave us okay that they reflected his intention properly, and it was a big schus to be able to participate in extra Harbatzas HaTorah, to have his comments to really, Rabbi Lopiansky style, which he takes often ideas that seem to be, not contemporary inherently, and he shows them how they fit in a contemporary way, in a practical, meaningful way for anybody who's learning that text.
Any other examples, interesting points that you want to mention for the listener?
Yeah, I would say if you're on the title page, not the title page in Mosai Rav Kook, but the original title page that we put there, and also we tried to put as we kept inside as well, the red ink cover from the original print. Originally I wanted to have an exact copy of the red ink on the cover, but that was not meant to be. But we have the red ink cover from the original print. So if you look in the Haggadah there, so he actually notes that the Haggadah is 3 perushim woven into one. Chaste Hashem, which is talking about Hashem does chesed by Tzias Mitzrayim in every generation. Ma'oz Amuna, where a person can find a strength in knowing that Hashem is with them and doesn't abandon us. And Gula Salamim, that the Gula of Mitzrayim continues for all generations. And all 3 of those titles are titles in the Haggadah to let you know that this is a section that deals with one of those 3 things. But again, they're all woven around the ultimate theme of Emunah and seeing Emunah through the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It is really the Haggadah. It is really a lichatchila form of telling the story of Emunah and Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's not about a personal gula or pop psychology, or it's not about different ideas about hashkafa. It really sticks to the mitzvahs of Leil HaSeder. I'll tell you how exacting he is in his parish. I originally thought that maybe I should take the pieces to supplement the pieces of Hallel from the Yitzchak Siddur and add them here where he didn't say anything. And then when I went to those pieces and I went through them carefully, I realized that no, he was very particular. Every single piece that he chose on Hallel, even benching, was carefully orchestrated and written for his theme of Geula, Chaste Hashem, Emunah for Leil HaSeder. And if you look at the pieces in the Siach Yitzchak Siddur, so you'll see they have nothing to do with this theme. They're talking about something else. It doesn't fit the theme of Leil HaSeder, and therefore, obviously, he did not include it, because there are times in the Haggadah where he does cite things he says in the Siddur. He was aware of his Siddur and his Haggadah. So that indication of what he chooses to put in by not including the piece of Hallel from the Siddur and having other Perushim as well shows how careful Rabbi Yitzchak Malson was in his approach in every single piece being balanced and chosen before the Leil HaSeder. Again, he writes very sharp in certain areas. I'll note his piece by the Russia is a very, very sharp piece. about the struggles of the time. Now, that actually was originally printed under a pseudonym in Hapelis. I discovered this when I was looking at Mara Makombos. This was published in a pseudonym in a Torah newspaper in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, wherever it was, and he deals with a lot of the contemporary issues. It's an extremely contemporary Haggadah about struggles with Emunah, of challenges of what it means to be in Gullus, and he quotes from all different types of sources and all different types of places, really to bring that lesson home in the best possible way.
But you mentioned Hallel because it's interesting. There's one piece on Hallel in the Haggadah, and it's an interesting piece. He talks about the ger and he talks about stories that he heard. It's actually
yes. There's a lot. He weaves in a lot of interesting stories. He has stories from the Chassan Sofer, and all interesting things that he's heard that he felt connect. Stories about a Tsar in Russia and things and miracles that happened. Very, very interesting things. So we tried to go back to the original Aram HaKomas to correct mistakes and have the full text and all the things that we thought were important.
Who would you say this Haggadah is meant for?
I'm not going to sit here and say the Haggadah is for everybody, as some people would want to say. It's not for everybody. You definitely need to have a background, in learning. You have to be able to, go through, understand, background how to read not a simple, not necessarily a simple Hebrew. Like I said in the beginning, it is, again, do I think anybody can benefit from the Divrei Torah? For sure. But it is a real Litvisha Haggadah. Meaning, if a Litvak was going to, design a Perishon Haggadah, and it was Rabbi Yitzchak Maltzin, it would be this Haggadah. From the sources he chooses, how he develops the Divrei Torah, Amunah, Yetzias Mitzrayim, there's no Vortlach, really building up a real, Torah-dik and Amunah-dik approach to Yetzias Mitzrayim and Amunah and Gula.
All right, I guess I should learn the Haggadah then if it's meant for Litvaks. So the Haggadah is on Mossad Rav Kook's website. It should be available in Eretz Yisrael, and maybe it'll be available in America. If it's available and I find out before, I'll try to put in the show notes. But
we'll see.
Anyone can reach out to me. They can reach out to you. Yeah, it's not, hopefully it will be. But if not, it'll be available down the road and after Pesach.
Yeah. I have 2 or 3 copies left myself. So if anybody wants to, if I have anything else left, I'm happy to give what I have.
Right, they can contact you, can purchase it, and whatever. Yeah. One final question, I guess, as an aside. This one you published it through Mossad Rav Kook. Was that because I think you mentioned this at the beginning, but just to reiterate, you decided because this goes well with their catalog of Beis Medrash Shel Hagra?
Correct. When you're looking to publish Haggadah, you want somebody to take it. And I thought it would be a relatively easy sell for them because it was in their Beis Medrash and they have wide appeal. They publish and distribute everywhere. So that's why I went with Mossad Rav Kook.
Okay. Well, thank you, Rabbi Rice, for joining me once again.
Thank you so much.